Since we've got study visas also down 13%, we've got work visas down 11%, and also quite importantly, we've got the dependents of people who came over on study visas also down actually 81% for the first 6 months of this year.
As you can see from the figure released, it shows that fewer number of people have been granted the dependent visa in the United Kingdom. So this brings people into a lot of fix, especially those who are currently on both student visa and post-study work visa. The question now is, what is the possibility of getting a skilled worker visa that will sponsor the entire family? So this has been a major concern, in the heart of those who are currently looking at getting a visa sponsorship job and hoping their partner and dependents will be able to stay on that same visa. There are different strategies that we've been able to implement in the last couple of months, which has worked for so many people. And I think it's important for me to share with you guys so as to avoid, people getting one person getting a visa and the dependents not being able to and having to go back home, and it becomes a little bit messy. So if you're currently in the UK looking at getting a visa sponsorship and hoping that your partner and your dependent are able to switch you, then you should want to stick to this video to the end. And if you're coming across my channel for the very first time, please do it to hit on the subscribe button. Join the amazing growing family. And my fellow subscribers, thank you guys for being here. I really do appreciate you guys. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay, news that if you're getting a job around care and your question code is 6135636, according to the policy, you're no longer allowed to bring in your dependent, or your dependent is not allowed to switch on that new visa with you. However, there is an adjustment to that policy, which I'll be talking about later in this video. Now, I'm going to start with the conversation with those who are looking at getting a skilled worker visa sponsorship job and hoping that they're able to bring their dependents. Now, at the moment, if you get a skilled worker job that sponsors you, I mean, a proper skilled worker job, not the health and care visa, your dependents can always apply with you. But I think the major challenge faced by so many people right now is even being able to get the skilled worker job. Now, many organizations in the UK, I can remember a particular job offer I got last year, and for some reason I got a better one, so I didn't eventually go for that job offer. Even though they had sent me the COS, but then they pushed out that same vacancy again, they took away the COS option. So many organizations are now limiting the number of work visa they're able to issue, and this is simply because of the new proposed policy by the new Labour government saying organization we need to like prove more reasons why they would want to rely on overseas worker more than UK nationals. But that's not really the point of this video. Now, if you're a family, so for example, let's say this family came into the UK on the student visa, so there's a primary applicant who's probably obviously the student and their dependents. Now, if the family is planning to like invest in skills, or they're planning to like take up a course to help with their work, trying to like build up technical skills to give them some level of competitive edge when they start pushing that application, in my own opinion, I think it makes more sense for the student or the person who is about to graduate or who recently graduated to be the one that takes up that should I say that challenge. And the reason for this is because of the new entrant rule. I'm going to give you a very a very good example. So, for example, if the primary applicant decides to apply for a job, let's say apply for a business analyst job that pays 35,000, that primary applicant, if he or she gets that job, is able to apply for the skilled worker visa, and the salary threshold requirement would not be a problem, because as a student, based on what is on gov.uk, if a student graduates in the last 4 years, such student is entitled or is allowed to leverage on the new entrant rule. So it's either you're below 26 or you graduated from any of the UK universities in the last 4 years. If you meet any of these criteria, you can apply for the skilled worker visa without necessarily meeting the salary threshold requirements. Now, on the flip side, if the person that the family decides to invest on is the dependent, it means that the dependent must get a job that pays at least £38,700 for he or she to be able to get the skilled worker visa, if that makes sense. So if you're looking at, oh, we're transitioning to a new field, want to get into tech, now the person that should take up that responsibility should be the student who is the primary applicant, so that you can leverage on the new entrant rule to get a job that probably won't pay lower than the salary threshold and still be able to apply for the skilled worker visa sponsorship. I've seen so many families make this mistake. For example, I had a chat with someone a couple of days ago, and the I think the husband was a dependent, so he decided he was going to learn some new skills, cybersecurity and all of that. And he was able to eventually get a job, and the job pays 34,500. Now, because he's independent, he can apply even though the company has the certificate to sponsor. They couldn't sponsor him because he needs to meet the 30,700 requirements. Now, imagine if that job role was gotten by the student who is the main applicant. It will have been an easy peasy application. Go ahead with the visa application because of the new entrant rule. So this is really important, and this is some of the mistakes I've seen people make over time, which I think it's important to like have conversation about it to avoid it. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is on the health and care visa. Now, the new adjustment made on that policy now says that although if the main applicant get a job that has 6135, the dependent can switch or can join the person on that visa. Now, the new adjustment now says that if the main applicant who got a job at 6135 and the dependent, let's say the wife or the husband, the partner, also got another job that is 6135, the new policy says that if both partners are on the health and care visa with the same occupation code, their dependent, their children are able to apply under them. So that's a new adjustment to that particular policy. So you say, I know it's a lot because consider kids are involved, it becomes really difficult. I think this is the argument around this change in policy that's not fair, because if both parties are contracted for 37.5 hours, how then do they manage the kids? It becomes really, really difficult to manage the kids. But yeah, I think that's just one thing they're trying to put in place to help those who are looking at getting their partner or getting their children to stay with them on that visa. So yeah, that's really that about the some of the important or few changes that has been happening around UK immigration policies. And however, there's quite a lot of conversation around other visa categories and also those coming to the UK illegally. So you probably want to check out the video that is going to come up shortly to get to know more about what is happening in terms of UK immigration, latest figures released by the Home Office. I hope you find this informative. If you do, please click on the subscribe button. And if you're coming across my channel for the first time, do well to hit on the subscribe button to join amazing family. If you have any question, please state in the comment section, and you can go ahead to watch this video.
Has released its latest immigration figures showing that irregular arrivals were down over the last year period. Almost 39,000 people arrived to the UK irregularly in the year up to June. That's a drop, though, of 26%. Small boat arrivals were down 29% on the same period the year before and made up 81% of those irregular arrivals. Almost every person who arrived this way claimed asylum, but 96% of these applications were still undecided by the end of June. The Schools Minister, Catherine McKinnell, said this drop in irregular arrivals doesn't mean the previous government's plan was working.
Their plans were not working. The Rwanda plan was a gimmick, and we've already seen since Labour took office 9 flights of people already being returned because they have been processed. And that is the best way to manage our immigration challenges, is to make sure that we're actually processing people when they arrive here, that those who are entitled to stay can stay, those who aren't are returned. The government absolutely left the chaos to deal with, and we're picking up the pieces and we're repairing the mess.
Our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, has been crunching the numbers for us. Mari, what else have we learnt this morning?
Yes, morning, Gareth. So this new Home Office data really starts to paint a picture of if and what policies from the previous government were potentially working. So I know you've read through some of the headline figures there, but what's really interesting is actually when you look at the kind of overall picture. So small boats crossings down 29%. That's a pretty big headline, but also many would argue actually that the record levels from before mean that that's still going to be quite a high number, for instance. But also, for instance, we've got study visas also down 13%. We've got work visas down 11%, and also quite importantly we've got the dependents of people who came over on study visas also down actually 81% for the first 6 months of this year. And therefore, as I predicted before, you're going to have Conservative voices saying, well, this is thanks to our policies and this is because of us. So let me read you a tweet from James Cleverly, the former Home Secretary, of course, under the Conservative government before. He said, "When I said I was going to cut immigration, I meant it. Visas down, small boats arrivals down, cut the backlog, cut the asylum grant rate. It's not about words, it's about delivery. And now, in that clip from the government minister, Catherine McKinnell, she was trying to, justify the fact that actually, no, this is not the Conservative plan that was working, and trying to deny those claims that the Tories are going to try and take credit for some of these figures. But it's quite difficult because if you just look at the cold hard facts and if you just look at the numbers, these are figures from June, the end of June 2023 until the end of June 2024. So a 12-month period in which almost completely entirely actually was under the Conservative government. And so those figures going down could be argued that actually maybe it was working. We know that they've put in certain policies, especially around, like I said, things like student visas and the dependence of student visas, but also interestingly, there's some figures around the enforcement of returns, so 48% increase in that. Now that's quite a lot of kind of driven by 87% of those actually, in fact, was about Albanian enforced returns because of, again, the previous government having a deal with Albania. But nonetheless, some of these numbers seem to suggest that actually maybe it was actually having some level of an effect. And to an extent, you could argue that Rishi Sunak might think to himself, maybe I should have gone in the autumn and not called a July election. Then he would have had a Bank of England interest rate. He would have had small boat crosses reducing, as well as also some other things that he could have potentially pointed to, for instance, economic growth as well. So I think Rishi Sunak might be sitting this morning thinking to himself,